The massive alien ship hung in space like a dark moon. Admiral Zexthek stood on his command bridge, his forearms crossed behind his back. His red eyes stared at the small blue planet below. The world was called New Haven, home to over 2 million. Humans, send the message, Zexthek said to his communications officer. The message was simple and direct. The humans had 72 hours to surrender completely. If they refused, the Korathine Empire would destroy every city on the planet. No human would be left alive. Zexthek had done this before, many times. The Korathians had conquered 47 different worlds in the past 300 years. Each time was the same. The aliens would arrive with their huge fleet. They would make their demands. The enemy would either surrender immediately or try to fight back with everything they had. The humans would probably choose to fight. Zexthek's spies had been watching human space for months. They had seen the human military ships, counted their weapons, studied their tactics. Humans seemed to like big battles with lots of ships and lots of noise. How many ships do you think they will send? Asked Commander Veltar, Zexthek's second in command. Zexthek looked at the tactical display. It showed 847 Korathian ships surrounding the human world. Massive battleships, fast cruisers, and deadly fighters filled the space around New Haven like a metal storm. The humans will send at least 1,000 ships, Zexthek said. Maybe more. They are proud creatures. They will not let one of their worlds die without a fight. On the planet below, Governor Lisa. Martinez sat in her office, reading the alien message for the 10th time. Her hands shook as she held the data pad. Outside her window, she could see the lights of New Haven's capital city. 2.3 million people lived on this world. Farmers, teachers, doctors, children. All of them would die if help did not. Lisa had already sent an emergency message to Earth. The signal would take 18 hours to reach home. Even if Earth sent help immediately, it would take almost 2 full days for any ships to arrive. That left very little time. "Ma'am," said her aide, a young man named Peter Walsh, "the alien ships are blocking all traffic in and out of the system. No civilian ships can escape." Lisa nodded. She had expected this. The Korathians wanted to make sure no one could run away. They wanted everyone to see their power. "Have you heard anything from our defense ships?" Lisa asked. Peter shook his head. New Haven only had 6 small patrol ships. They were designed to stop pirates and smugglers, not fight a war against an alien empire. The 6 ships had moved to the far side of the system when the alien fleet arrived. Their captains were smart enough to know they could not win a direct fight. Far away from New Haven, in the deep emptiness between stars, Captain Jake Morrison stood in the command center of his ship. The UCS Defiant was not like other human ships. It was smaller than a battleship, but bigger than a cruiser. More importantly, it carried technology that no other ship in the human fleet possessed. "Captain," said Commander Amy Blake, his tactical officer, "we just received an emergency signal from New Haven." Jake read the message quickly. His face grew hard as he learned about the alien ultimatum. Amy watched him carefully. She had served with Jake for 3 years. She knew that look in his eyes. "How far are we from New Haven?" Jake asked. 36 hours at maximum speed, said Lieutenant Ryan Cooper from the engineering station. Jake did the math in his head. The aliens had given New Haven 72 hours. If the Defiant left right now, they would arrive with 12 hours to spare. But 1 ship against 800, it seemed impossible. "Sir," said Chief Petty Officer Kate Sullivan, "Earth Command is probably sending a full battle fleet. We should wait for orders." Jake looked at the star map on his screen. He could see New Haven's location, marked in red to show the danger. He thought about the 2 million people on that world. Men, women, and children who had done nothing wrong. except be in the wrong place when aliens decided to expand their empire. No, Jake said finally. We're not waiting. Set course for New Haven. Maximum speed. Amy looked surprised. Sir, we're just one ship. The tactical reports show hundreds of enemy vessels. I can count, Commander, Jake said. But those people need help now, not in 3 days when the main fleet might arrive. Dr. Sam Turner, the ship's science officer, looked up from his station. Sam was the man who had designed most of the Defiant's special systems. Captain, our new weapons have never been tested in real combat. We don't know if they'll work against alien technology. Jake smiled, but it was not a happy smile. Then I guess we're about to find out. The Defiant turned toward New Haven and began to accelerate. In the engine room, Lieutenant Cooper pushed the experimental drive system harder than it had ever been pushed before. The ship shot through space like a bullet, racing against time. Back on New Haven, Lisa Martinez stood on the balcony of her office building. Above her, she could see tiny lights moving across the night sky. Those lights were alien ships, each one carrying enough firepower to level a city. Soon, those same ships might be firing on her world. Governor, Peter said from behind her. We've received a response from Earth Command. Lisa turned around quickly. What do they say? Peter's face was grim. The main fleet is being assembled, but it will take at least 4 days to reach us. Maybe longer. Lisa felt her heart sink. 4 days was too long. The aliens would attack in less than 3 days. She thought about evacuation, but there was nowhere to go. The alien ships surrounded the entire system. Is there any other help coming? She asked. Peter checked his notes. There is one ship, the UCS Defiant. It's an experimental vessel that was conducting research in this sector. The captain says he'll be here in 36 hours. One ship? Lisa asked. Yes, ma'am. Just one. Lisa looked back up at the alien lights in the sky. 800 ships against one. It was hopeless. But at least someone was coming. At least someone cared enough to try. Admiral Zexthek received the report about the human ship an hour later. His intelligence officers had detected the vessel's approach and identified it as a military craft. But only one ship puzzled him. Are you certain? He asked his scanner operator. Only one human vessel? Yes, Admiral. A single ship, approaching at high speed. Zexthek studied the tactical display. In all his years of conquest, he had never seen anything like this. Usually, the enemy sent everything they had. Hundreds of ships, thousands of fighters, every weapon they could find. But the humans were sending just one ship. Perhaps it is a scout, suggested Commander Veltar. Maybe they want to see our strength before committing their main force. Zexthek nodded slowly. That made sense. The humans probably wanted to study Carathian tactics before the real battle began. This single ship would take pictures, record their formations, then report back to the human fleet. Or maybe, Zexthek said with a laugh, they are coming to surrender. The bridge crew joined in his laughter. The idea of humans surrendering was amusing. Most species fought to the bitter end, even when they had no chance of winning. But perhaps humans were smarter than the others. Should we destroy the ship when it arrives? Asked Veltar. No, Zexthek said. Let it come. I want to speak with its captain. I want to hear what the humans have to say for themselves. The countdown continued. 35 hours until the Defiant arrived. 67 hours until the Carathian deadline. On New Haven, people looked up at the sky and waited. In space, alien warriors prepared their weapons. And somewhere between the stars, one human ship raced toward an impossible battle. Jake Morrison sat in his captain's chair, watching the stars stream past his ship. He knew the odds. He knew what he was flying into. But he also knew that sometimes, when everything seemed hopeless, one person could make a difference. The Defiant flew on through the darkness, carrying the hopes of 2 million people toward a confrontation that would change everything. The UCS Defiant dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the New Haven system. Captain Jake Morrison stood on his bridge, looking at the sensor readings that filled his screens. What he saw made his crew fall silent. "Count them," Jake said quietly. Commander Amy Blake worked at her tactical station, her fingers dancing over the controls. 847 ships, Captain. 23 of them are dreadnoughts, each one bigger than anything in our fleet. The alien ships were arranged in a perfect circle around New Haven. They hung in space like deadly ornaments, their dark hulls reflecting the light of the system's star. Some were as long as city blocks. Others were smaller, but carried enough. Weapons to destroy a moon. "They're not even trying to hide," said Lieutenant Ryan Cooper from engineering. "They want everyone to see how powerful they are." Chief Kate Sullivan looked up from her station. "Sir, we're receiving multiple scanner sweeps. The aliens know we're here." Jake nodded. He had expected this. The Korathians would want to study his ship just as he was studying theirs. Both sides were trying to understand what they were facing. "Dr. Turner," Jake said to his science officer, "what do you think of their formation?" Sam Turner adjusted his glasses and studied the tactical display. He was a thin man with gray hair, more comfortable in a laboratory than on a warship's bridge. But his mind understood technology better than anyone else in the human fleet. "It's a standard siege formation," Sam said, "designed to intimidate and overwhelm. They've probably used it dozens of times before, but Captain, it has weaknesses. Such as they're positioned for maximum visual impact, not maximum tactical efficiency. If we were to attack the center of their formation, they would have trouble supporting each other without risking friendly fire." Amy looked up from her station. "Sir, with respect, we're talking about attacking 800 ships with one. Even if their formation has weaknesses, the numbers are impossible." Jake walked to the front of the bridge, where the main screen showed the alien fleet in all its terrible glory. His crew was right. The odds were beyond hopeless. But Jake had spent his entire career preparing for impossible situations. "Kate," he said, "send a message to the alien flagship. Tell them Captain Jake Morrison of the United Colonial Ship Defiant requests permission to speak with their commander." Kate's hands hesitated over her controls. "Sir, are you sure that's wise?" "Do it." The message was sent. For 10 minutes, nothing happened. Then Kate's station chimed with an incoming signal. "Captain, the alien flagship is responding. They're agreeing to a communication link." The main screen changed. Instead of showing the alien fleet, it now showed the bridge of a Korathian warship. The alien who appeared was tall and powerfully built, with 4 arms and red eyes that seemed to burn with inner fire. "I am Admiral Zexthek of the Korathian Empire," the alien said. His voice was deep and threatening. "You command the human vessel?" "I do," Jake replied calmly. "Captain Jake Morrison, I understand you've made some demands of the people on New Haven." Zexthak laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Demands? I have given them the honor of surrender. In 72 hours, they will become part of the Korathian Empire, or they will be destroyed." Jake nodded as if this was perfectly reasonable. "I see. And I suppose you expect the humans to accept this?" "Of course. Look around you, human. I have brought 800 ships to this system. You have brought one. Even your species cannot be foolish enough to fight such odds." Jake smiled. It was the kind of smile that made his crew nervous, because they knew what it meant. "Actually, Admiral, I'm here to discuss your surrender." The bridge of the Defiant fell completely silent. Amy's mouth dropped open. Ryan stopped what he was doing at the engineering station. Even Dr. Turner looked up from his instruments in shock. On the screen, Admiral Zexthak's red eyes grew wider. For a moment, he seemed unable to speak. Then his face twisted into something between confusion and rage. My surrender? Zexthak snarled. Human, are you suffering from some form of mental illness? Not at all, Jake said pleasantly. I'm here representing the United Colonial Defense Force. We're prepared to accept the surrender of your fleet and allow you to return to Korathian space unharmed. But you need to withdraw from this system immediately. Zexthak stared at Jake, as if he were looking at a creature from another dimension. In 3 centuries of conquest, no one had ever spoken to him this way. Enemy commanders usually begged for mercy or made desperate threats. They did not calmly discuss the Korathian surrender. Human, Zexthak said slowly, I will show you the power you face. The screen changed to show a tactical display of the alien fleet. Ship names and weapon counts scrolled past in alien writing. The display showed energy readings that could destroy planets, armor thick enough to stop nuclear weapons, and enough firepower to level entire continents. 847 vessels, Zexthak continued. 15 million Korathian warriors. Weapons that have conquered 47 worlds. And you ... you have 1 ship. Jake studied the display carefully. He made notes on a small pad, occasionally asking Amy to record specific details. When the presentation was finished, he looked back at Zexthak. Thank you for the intelligence. Briefing, Admiral. Very thorough. Zexthak's confusion was obvious. Intelligence briefing? The detailed information about your fleet composition, weapon systems, and tactical deployment. My tactical officer has recorded everything. It will be very useful. Amy realized what Jake was doing. By acting grateful for the information instead of intimidated, he was suggesting that the humans had wanted this data for their own purposes. Zexthak began to feel uncertain. This was not how conquered species were supposed to behave. The human showed no fear, no desperation. Instead, he acted as if receiving detailed information about Korathian military strength was exactly what he had hoped for. Human, you try my patience, Zexthak growled. Explain your presence here. Are you a scout for a larger fleet? When will your reinforcements arrive? Jake checked his watch. Admiral, I'm going to set a timer for exactly 1 hour. At the end of that hour, if your ships have not begun withdrawing from this system, I'll be forced to take action to protect the civilians on New Haven. 1 hour? Zexthak could barely contain his rage. What can you possibly do in 1 hour? Suppose we'll find out, Jake said calmly. I do hope you'll reconsider. Violence benefits no one. The communication link ended. The main screen returned to showing the alien fleet, still hanging in space like a cloud of death around New Haven. Amy turned to stare at her captain. Sir, what exactly are we doing? Jake walked back to his command chair. We're fighting a battle, Commander. Not with weapons, at least not yet. We're fighting with psychology. I don't understand. Dr. Turner looked up from his station. The captain is making them question their assumptions, he explained. They expect us to be afraid. They expect us to act like every other species they've conquered, but we're not. Ryan Cooper shook his head. But sir, we still have to face 800 ships with 1. Psychology won't stop their weapons. Jake sat down in his chair and activated his personal console. Kate, begin charging all weapon systems. Ryan, I want maximum power to shields and engines. Sam, activate all experimental systems. All of them, sir? Sam asked. Some of those systems have never been tested outside of laboratory conditions. All of them, Jake confirmed. Amy, I want you to plot attack vectors through the center of their formation. Target their command ships first. Amy's hands moved over her controls, but she looked worried. Captain, even with our new technology, the odds are overwhelming. Jake looked at his crew. These were good people, highly trained and completely loyal. They deserved to understand what they were facing. Listen to me, he said. The Korathians have conquered 47 worlds because they rely on intimidation and overwhelming force. They show up with massive fleets, make demands, and their enemies either surrender or throw everything they have into hopeless battles. He gestured toward the screen showing the alien formation. But look at how they're deployed. They're not arranged for maximum tactical efficiency. They're arranged for maximum psychological impact. They want their enemies to see how hopeless resistance is. That doesn't change the numbers, sir, Cake pointed out. No, it doesn't. But it tells us something important about how they think. They've never faced an enemy who refused to play by their rules. They've never fought someone who didn't act afraid. The timer on Jake's console showed 53 minutes remaining. Outside, the alien fleet waited in perfect formation, confident in their overwhelming superiority. Sir, Amy said quietly, what if they call our bluff? What if they realize we're just one ship with experimental weapons? Jake smiled again, but this time it was different. This time it was the smile of a man who had made peace with impossible odds. Then we show them that sometimes one ship is enough. Admiral Zextek paced back and forth on his command bridge. His 4 arms were clenched behind his back, and his red eyes burned with confusion and anger. Around him, his bridge crew worked quietly, afraid to disturb their commander's dark mood. 47 worlds, Zextek muttered to himself. 47 conquests, and never has any species acted like this. Commander Veltar approached carefully. Admiral, perhaps the human is insane. Mental illness might explain his behavior. Zextek stopped pacing and stared at the tactical display. The single human ship hung in space at the edge of the system, looking tiny and helpless compared to the Korathian fleet. But somehow, that small vessel had managed to disturb the Admiral's confidence. Run a full analysis of the human ship, Zextek ordered. I want to know everything about its capabilities. The scanner operator worked at his station for several minutes. Admiral, the ship appears to be approximately 400 meters long, medium mass. But, sir, there's something strange about its energy readings. Explain. The power output is much higher than it should be for a ship that size. And there are energy patterns I don't recognize. The computer cannot identify several of the systems. Zextek felt a chill run down his spine. Unknown technology was always dangerous. The Korathians had conquered so many worlds partly because they understood the weapons and tactics of their enemies. But this human ship was different. Could it be some kind of super weapon? Asked Veltar. I don't know, Zextek admitted. Send a message to our intelligence division. I want everything they have on human military technology. Everything. Meanwhile, on the bridge of the Defiant, Captain Jake Morrison was having his own meeting with his senior staff. The main screen showed a detailed analysis of the Korathian fleet, with weak points and attack vectors highlighted in red. The experimental systems are online, reported Dr. Sam Turner. Quantum disruptors are at full power. Adaptive shields are active, and the tactical AI is running at maximum capacity. Amy Blake looked up from her station. Captain, I've plotted 17 different attack runs through their formation. But even with our new weapons, I can't see how we can disable 800 ships. Jake studied the tactical display. The Korathian ships were arranged in 3 concentric circles around New Haven. The outer ring consisted of smaller vessels, probably fighters and escort ships. The middle ring held cruisers and destroyers. The inner ring was made up of the massive dreadnoughts and command ships. We're not going to fight all 800 ships, Jake said. We're going to fight their command structure. Ryan Cooper looked confused. Sir, think about it, Jake explained. The Carathians have conquered dozens of worlds using the same tactics. They're a military empire built on discipline and hierarchy. Every ship in that fleet follows orders from the command vessels. Dr. Turner nodded slowly. If we could disrupt their command and control systems, ... Exactly. The quantum disruptors don't destroy ships. They cause cascade failures in electronic systems. If we can hit their command vessels and jam their communications, the rest of the fleet becomes a mob of individual ships with no coordination. Kate Sullivan frowned. But sir, to reach the command ships, we'd have to fly through the entire fleet. They'd tear us apart before we got halfway there. Jake smiled. Not if we do it fast enough. And not if they can't hit us. The timer on Jake's console showed 38 minutes remaining. On New Haven, Governor Lisa Martinez stood in her emergency command center, watching reports from around the planet. People were gathering in underground shelters, preparing for the worst. But many were also watching the skies, hoping that somehow the single human ship could save them. Governor, said Peter Walsh, we're receiving a transmission from the human ship. Lisa activated the communication link. Captain Morrison's face appeared on the screen. He looked calm and confident, which seemed impossible given the situation. Governor Martinez, Jake said, I want you to know that we're going to do everything possible to protect your people. In about 30 minutes, things might get very active up here. I need you to make sure everyone stays in their shelters until I give the all clear. Captain, Lisa said, are you really going to attack their entire fleet with one ship? Jake's smile was reassuring. Ma'am, sometimes the best way to fight a big enemy is not to fight them the way they expect. We're going to try something different. The communication ended, leaving Lisa staring at a blank screen. Around her, the emergency command staff continued their preparations. But everyone was thinking the same thing. How could one ship possibly survive against such odds? Back on the Corathian flagship, Admiral Zexthak was receiving troubling reports. From his intelligence division, the data on human military capabilities was contradictory and confusing. Admiral, said his intelligence officer, our information on human weapons technology is limited. Most of our data comes from long range observations and intercepted communications. But there are gaps in our knowledge. What kind of gaps? The humans have been conducting experiments with quantum-based weapons and adaptive shielding. Our sources suggest they've made breakthroughs, but we don't know the extent of their progress. Zexthak felt his confidence slipping away. For the first time in decades, he was facing an unknown enemy with unknown capabilities. The human captain's strange behavior was beginning to make sense. Perhaps the humans really did have some kind of super weapon. Admiral, Commander Veltar interrupted, the human ship is moving. Everyone on the bridge turned to look at the tactical display. The small human vessel was no longer hanging at the edge of the system. It was accelerating directly toward the Corathian fleet. Impossible, Zexthak breathed. They're attacking us. The human ship was moving faster than any vessel its size should be able to move. It shot through space like a bullet, heading straight for the center of the Corathian formation. All ships, prepare for combat, Zexthak ordered. Target that vessel and destroy it. But even as he gave the order, the Admiral felt a strange uncertainty. The human captain had been so confident, so sure of himself. What if this lone ship really could threaten the entire fleet? On the Defiant, Jake Morrison gripped the arms of his command chair as his ship raced toward the enemy formation. Around him, his crew worked with desperate efficiency. Adaptive shields at maximum, Kate reported. All weapon systems ready. Quantum disruptors locked onto priority targets, Amy added. Tactical AI is calculating optimal attack vectors. Dr. Turner looked up from his science station. Captain, the experimental systems are operating beyond design specifications. I can't guarantee they'll hold up under combat stress. They'll hold, Jake said with absolute confidence. Ryan, give me everything the engines have got. The Defiant shot into the outer ring of Korathian ships. Immediately, hundreds of weapons opened fire. Energy beams and plasma bolts filled the space around the human vessel. But something impossible happened. The weapons seemed to pass right through the ship without causing damage. Adaptive shields are working perfectly, Kate called out. They're analyzing each weapon type and adjusting our defensive frequencies in real time. Jake watched as his ship weaved between the alien vessels. The Korathians were firing everything they had, but their weapons couldn't lock onto a target. That kept changing its defensive characteristics. Beginning attack run on command vessels, Amy reported. Quantum disruptors firing. The Defiant's exotic weapons lashed out at the Korathian command ships. The quantum disruptors didn't create explosions or visible damage. Instead, they caused invisible cascade failures that spread through the alien ship's electronic systems. Like a plague, one by one, the massive Korathian dreadnoughts went dark. Their lights went out, their weapons stopped firing, and their engines shut down. The ships didn't explode or break apart. They just died, becoming lifeless hulks drifting. In space, Admiral Zexthek watched in horror as his flagship lost power. Emergency lighting flickered on as his ship's main systems failed one by one. "Report," he shouted. "Complete system failure, Admiral," his engineering officer called back. "Something has caused cascading failures throughout the ship. Life support is switching to emergency power." All around the formation, the same thing was happening to other command vessels. The human ship danced between the disabled dreadnoughts, somehow avoiding the weapons fire from hundreds of smaller ships. "How is this possible?" Veltar asked. Zexthik stared at the tactical display, watching his mighty fleet fall apart. The human ship was using weapons and tactics, unlike anything he had ever seen. Worse, it was becoming clear that the single vessel was winning. "Abandon ship," Zexthik ordered quietly. "Admiral, you heard me. Signal all command vessels to abandon. Ship, this battle is lost." As escape pods began launching from the disabled Korathian dreadnoughts, Jake Morrison allowed himself a small smile of satisfaction. The impossible was happening. One human ship was defeating an entire alien fleet, not through superior firepower, but through superior technology and unconventional thinking. The real battle was just beginning. The battle was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Captain Jake Morrison stood on his bridge, watching as the Defiant danced through the Korathian fleet like a ghost. Enemy weapons fire passed harmlessly around his ship, while his quantum disruptors reached out to touch one alien vessel after another. 17 command ships disabled, reported Commander Amy Blake. Their formation is starting to collapse. Jake could see it happening on the tactical display. The Korathian fleet had been perfectly organized, with every ship knowing its position and role. But as the command vessels went dark one by one, the remaining ships began to lose coordination. "Captain," called Chief Kate Sullivan, "I'm detecting massive communication failures throughout their fleet. The ships that are still active can't talk to each other." This was exactly what Jake had hoped for. The Korathians were a military empire built on discipline and hierarchy. Take away their command structure, and they became a mob of confused individuals. "Dr. Turner," Jake said, "how are our experimental systems holding up?" Sam Turner wiped sweat from his forehead as he monitored his instruments. "The quantum disruptors are operating at 120% of design capacity. The adaptive shields are working perfectly, but they're drawing enormous amounts of power. I'm not sure how much longer we can maintain this level of performance. Jake nodded. They didn't need to maintain it much longer. Amy, target the remaining command vessels. Let's finish this. The Defiant swept through the inner ring of the alien formation, its exotic weapons reaching out to disable the last few dreadnoughts. Each ship that went dark made the Korathian fleet weaker and more disorganized. Lieutenant Ryan Cooper looked up from his engineering station. Sir, some of the smaller ships are trying to retreat. They're breaking formation and heading for the edge of the system. Let them go, Jake said. We're not here to destroy their entire fleet. We're here to protect New Haven. Admiral Zexthek floated in the cramped confines of an escape pod, watching his fleet fall apart through a small window. Around him, other senior officers sat in stunned silence. In less than 3 hours, 800 ships had been reduced to chaos by a single human vessel. How did this happen? Muttered Commander Veltar. We had overwhelming superiority. Zexthek shook his head slowly. We had numbers. But numbers mean nothing if you can't use them effectively. The Admiral thought about the human captain's strange confidence. Morrison had known something that the Korathians did not. He had understood that their greatest strength could become their greatest weakness. Admiral, said one of the younger officers, what kind of weapons were they using? I've never seen anything like it. Neither have I, Zexthek admitted. The humans have developed technology we don't understand. Worse, they've learned to use it in ways we never anticipated. Through the escape pod's window, as Zexthek could see the human ship continuing its impossible dance through the remains of his fleet. Most of the Korathian vessels were now either disabled or retreating. The few that remained active were scattered and confused, unable to coordinate their attacks. On the planet below, Governor Lisa Martinez stood in her command center, watching the battle unfold on her screens. The reports coming in from orbital. Sensors seemed impossible to believe. Governor, said Peter Walsh, the alien fleet is in complete disarray. Over half their ships are disabled, and the rest are either retreating or operating independently. Lisa stared at the tactical display. The perfect circle of alien ships that had surrounded her world was now a scattered mess of disabled vessels and fleeing survivors. One ship, she whispered. One human ship did all this. On the Defiance bridge, Jake Morrison was preparing for the final phase of the battle. The Korathian command structure was broken, but there were still hundreds of individual ships that could pose a threat to New Haven. Captain, Amy said, I'm detecting about 200 active vessels. Most are small fighters and escorts, but there are still some dangerous ones among them. Jake studied the tactical display. The remaining Korathian ships were spread out across the system, no longer working together. Some were trying to regroup, others were attempting to retreat, and a few seemed to be moving toward New Haven as if planning individual attacks. We need to send a message, Jake said. Something that will convince the rest of them to withdraw. Dr. Turner looked up from his station. Captain, we could demonstrate the range of our quantum disruptors. Show them that distance won't protect them, Jake smiled. Do it. The Defiant's exotic weapons reached out across hundreds of thousands of kilometers of space. One by one, Korathian ships that thought they were safely out of range suddenly found their systems failing. The demonstration was clear. The human ship could disable any vessel in the system, regardless of distance. The effect was immediate. Korathian ships throughout the system began broadcasting surrender signals. Some requested permission to rescue their disabled comrades. Others simply asked for safe passage out of human space. Jake opened a communication channel to the entire Korathian fleet. This is Captain Morrison of the UCS Defiant. To all Korathian vessels, you have 1 hour to collect your disabled ships and withdraw from this system. Any vessel that remains after that time will be considered hostile. The response was swift. Korathian rescue ships immediately began moving toward their disabled companions. The few remaining active warships started heading for the edge of the system at maximum speed. Admiral Zexthak's escape pod was picked up by a retreating cruiser. As he was brought aboard, the Admiral felt the full weight of his defeat. He had lost not just a battle, but the foundation of Korathian military doctrine. "Admiral," said the cruiser's captain, "what are your orders?" Zexthak looked out at the scattered remains of his once mighty fleet. Dozens of dreadnoughts drifted powerless. In space, hundreds of smaller vessels were either disabled or fleeing. The human ship continued to patrol the system, making sure the withdrawal proceeded as ordered. "Signal the fleet," Zexthak said quietly. "We're going home." Back on the Defiant, Jake Morrison finally allowed himself to relax. The impossible had happened. One ship had defeated an entire alien fleet, not through superior firepower, but through superior thinking. "Status report," Jake said to his crew. "All systems functioning normally," Ryan reported from engineering. "The experimental technology performed better than we hoped. No major damage to the ship." Amy looked up from her tactical station. "Sir, the Korathian fleet is withdrawing as ordered. The last of their ships should be out of the system within 6 hours." Jake nodded with satisfaction. "Kate, open a channel to New Haven." Governor Lisa Martinez appeared on the main screen. Her face showed a mixture of relief, gratitude, and amazement. "Captain Morrison," she said, "I don't know how to thank you. What you've done today seems impossible." "Just doing our job, Governor." Jake replied, "The people of New Haven are safe. That's what matters. Captain, if you don't mind me asking, how did you do it? How did one ship defeat 800? Jake smiled. "Governor, sometimes the best way to win a fight is not to fight the way your enemy expects." The Korathians were prepared for a conventional battle with lots of ships and lots of firepower. They weren't prepared for something completely different. "Doctor." Turner looked up from his science station. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from one of the Korathian rescue ships. It's Admiral Zexthak. He's requesting permission to speak with you." Jake raised an eyebrow. "Put him through." The main screen split to show both Governor Martinez and Admiral Zexthak. The alien commander looked older and more tired than he had a few hours earlier. His red eyes no longer burned with confidence. "Captain Morrison," Zexthak said, "I must ask you something. How many ships like yours does humanity possess?" Jake considered his answer carefully. The truth was that the Defiant was the only ship of its kind, equipped with experimental technology, that had never been tested in combat before today. But the Admiral didn't need to know that. "Admiral," Jake said finally, "humanity believes in being prepared for any situation. We prefer to avoid conflict when possible, but we're ready to defend ourselves when necessary." Zexthak nodded slowly. "I understand. Captain, in 3 centuries of conquest, I have never faced an enemy like you. Your tactics, your technology, your approach to warfare, everything was completely unexpected." "War is changing, Admiral," Jake said. "The old ways of doing things don't always work anymore." "Indeed." Zexthak paused, then continued. "Captain, I will carry word of this defeat back to the Korathian Empire. Our leaders will want to know what kind of enemy they face in humanity." "And what will you tell them?" Zexthak's expression was thoughtful. "I will tell them that humans are not like the other species we have conquered. I will tell them that humanity fights with intelligence and innovation, not just strength and numbers. And I will tell them that perhaps it is time for the Korathian Empire to consider alternatives to conquest." Jake was surprised by this response. "You're suggesting peace, Admiral?" "I am suggesting that some battles cannot be won through force." "Alone," Zexthak replied. "Today, You have taught me that lesson." The communication with the Admiral ended, leaving Jake alone with Governor Martinez on the screen. "Captain," Lisa said, "what happens now? Will the Carathians return?" Jake thought about Admiral Zexthek's words. 6 months had passed since the Battle of New Haven. The story of how one human ship defeated an entire alien fleet had spread throughout the galaxy like wildfire. In the farthest corners of space, beings who had never heard of humanity now whispered about the species that fought wars with their minds instead of just their weapons. Captain Jake Morrison stood in the conference room aboard the Defiant, looking out at an amazing sight. Dozens of ships from different species floated in space around his vessel. There were the insect-like Zephyrians, the crystalline Voltari, the aquatic Neptunians, and many others. All of them had come to this meeting because of what happened at New Haven. "Captain," said Commander Amy Blake, "the delegates are ready to begin the conference." Jake nodded and took his place at the head of the conference table. Around him sat representatives from 15 different species, all of whom had one thing in common. They had lived under Corathian rule and wanted their freedom. The Zephyrian delegate, a being that looked like a giant mantis, spoke first. "Captain Morrison, when we heard about your victory over Admiral Zexthek, we could hardly believe it. The Carathians have ruled our worlds for over a century." "The important thing," Jake replied, "is that you're here now. Freedom is something worth fighting for, but it's also something that requires cooperation." A Voltari delegate, whose crystal body sparkled with inner light, made a musical sound that the translator rendered as words. "The Corathian Empire has grown weak since your victory. Many of their subject worlds are rebelling. But we need coordination if we are to succeed." Jake looked around the table at the assembled delegates. Each represented billions of beings who wanted to throw off Corathian rule. But Jake had learned that winning battles was only the first step toward lasting peace. "Before we talk about military cooperation," Jake said, "we need to talk about what comes after. What kind of galaxy do we want to build when the Carathians are no longer in control?" This question had been bothering Jake for months. It was easy to fight against oppression, but much harder to build something better in its place. Dr. Sam Turner, who had been quietly observing the meeting, spoke up. "If I may, Captain, I think we need to consider the Carathians themselves. Admiral Zexthek has been in contact with us several times since the battle. He seems genuinely interested in finding alternatives to conquest." This was true. Zexthek had surprised everyone by requesting regular communications with the human fleet. The old admiral seemed to be questioning everything he had believed about military power and conquest. "Speaking of Admiral Zexthek," Amy said, "he's requesting permission to join this conference. He says he has something important to discuss." Jake raised an eyebrow. "The Admiral wants to join a meeting of rebel species planning to overthrow his empire?" "That's what his message says." Jake looked around the table at the alien delegates. Several looked angry at the suggestion of including a Corathian in their discussions. Others seemed curious. "What do you all think?" Jake asked. "Should we hear what he has to say?" The debate that followed was intense. Some delegates wanted nothing to do with any Corathian. Others argued that if Admiral Zexthek was willing to talk, they should listen. Finally, the Neptunian delegate spoke. Her voice sounded like water flowing over rocks. "In my culture, we believe that enemies can become allies if they are willing to change. Perhaps we should hear what the Admiral has to say." Jake made the decision. "Very well. Invite Admiral Zexthek to join us." An hour later, the conference room had been reconfigured to accommodate a holographic projection of the Corathian Admiral. Zexthek appeared as a life-sized image at one end of the table, his forearms folded in what Jake had learned was a respectful posture. "Captain Morrison," Zexthek said, "honored delegates, I thank you for allowing me to speak." The Zephyrian Delegate made an angry clicking sound. Why should we listen to you, Korathian? Your empire has enslaved our people for generations. Zexthek's red eyes showed what Jake recognized as shame. You are right to be angry. I have spent 3 centuries conquering worlds, believing that might made right. But Captain Morrison taught me something important 6 months ago. And what was that? Jake asked. He taught me that true strength comes not from the ability to destroy, but from the wisdom to know when not to fight at all. The Admiral's words created a stir around the table. Several delegates began talking at once, their translators creating a cacophony of different languages. Zexthek raised one of his hands for silence. I have a proposal to make. The Korathian Empire is indeed weakening. Rebellions are breaking out on dozens of worlds. But instead of waiting for complete collapse and the chaos that would follow, I propose something different. What kind of proposal? Asked the Voltari delegate. A negotiated transition. The Korathian Empire will voluntarily give up control of all conquered worlds. In exchange, we ask for guarantees that Korathian colonies will be allowed to govern themselves peacefully. Jake stared at the Admiral in amazement. You're proposing that the Korathian Empire dissolve itself voluntarily? Not dissolve, Zexthek corrected. Transform. Instead of an empire built on conquest, we would become a federation of equal worlds. Each species would govern itself, but we would maintain trade and diplomatic relations. The silence that followed was profound. For centuries, the Korathian Empire had been the dominant force in this part of the galaxy. The idea that they would voluntarily give up that power seemed impossible. The Neptunian delegate was the first to speak. Admiral, why should we trust you? How do we know this isn't some kind of trick? Zexthek's expression was solemn. Because, honored delegate, I have seen the future. I have seen what happens when an empire built on force meets an opponent that fights with intelligence and innovation. The old ways are ending. We can either adapt or be swept away. Jake leaned forward in his chair. Admiral, what exactly are you proposing? A treaty. A formal agreement that would create a new galactic confederation. Each world would be free to govern itself according to its own customs and laws. Disputes would be resolved through negotiation, not conquest. And all species would work together for mutual benefit. The proposal was radical. For the first time in galactic history, a major empire was offering to give up its power voluntarily. But Jake could see problems with the idea. Admiral, Jake said, even if you're sincere, how do we know the rest of the Korathian leadership will agree to this? Zexthek smiled, showing his sharp teeth. Captain, you may be surprised to learn that many Korathian leaders are tired of constant warfare. Maintaining an empire through force is expensive and exhausting. Many of my colleagues would welcome the chance to focus on peaceful development instead of military conquest. Over the next several hours, the delegates debated Zexthek's proposal. Some were suspicious, others were cautiously optimistic. But gradually, a consensus began to emerge. The Zephyrian delegate, who had been most hostile to the Admiral, finally spoke. If the Korathians are truly willing to give up their empire, then perhaps we should give them the chance to prove it. Jake looked around the table at the assembled delegates. Are we all in agreement? Should we begin negotiations for this galactic confederation? One by one, the delegates voiced their agreement. Even the most skeptical admitted that the proposal was worth exploring. Very well, Jake said. Admiral Zexthek, we accept your proposal to begin negotiations. But understand that trust must be earned through actions, not just words. I understand completely, Captain, Zexthek replied, and I believe that actions will prove more convincing than any words I might offer. As the conference ended, and then the delegates prepared to return to their ships, Jake reflected on what they had accomplished. 6 months ago, He had fought a battle to save one human colony. Today, he had helped lay the foundation for a new kind of galactic civilization. Dr. Turner approached him as the conference room emptied. "Captain, do you think it will work? Can species that have been enemies for centuries really learn to live together peacefully?" Jake looked out at the stars, thinking about the future they were trying to build. "Sam, I've learned that the impossible has a way of becoming possible when people are willing to try something new." Commander Blake joined them at the window. "Sir, Earth Command is requesting a full report on the negotiations. They want to know if humanity is ready to be part of this galactic confederation." Jake smiled. "Tell them that humanity has always been ready to explore new frontiers. Today, we're not just exploring space. We're exploring the possibility of a better future for everyone." As the Defiant prepared to return to Earth with news of the proposed confederation, Jake Morrison thought about the strange journey that had brought him to this moment. He had started as a ship captain conducting routine reconnaissance. Now he was helping to reshape the political structure of an entire section of the galaxy. The battle at New Haven had proved that one ship could defeat an entire fleet. The negotiations that followed had proved something even more important, that former enemies could become allies if they were willing to change. In the years that followed, the Galactic Confederation would become a model for peaceful cooperation between different species. Trade would replace conquest, diplomacy would replace warfare, and exploration would replace expansion through force. And it all began with the day